I think there's absolutely an intersection of doing the right thing is what's also right for business. So it's keeping people happy. It's being accommodating, something like, hey, you don't need to be here at 9 o'clock every day. If you can't get until 9:15 because you have to drop your kid off, sure, no problem. Right. And there are people who are more sticklers about that sort of thing. So it's I think just figuring out where you push, what your non-negotiables are, and where you can give that type of leverage or flexibility, I should say.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we talk about how to treat your people right and why that's important in a growing organization, especially if you want to keep those people, you want to treat them right. Well, our special guest today is Jim Paolino, and I may have mispronounced that, but he is with co-founder of LodeStar Software Solutions. They provide data and information in the mortgage industry to help those transactions be more efficient and more effective. And that's what put them on the Inc. list this past year. We talk about, how he treats employees and, where this came from. Why treat them the way you want to be treated? Why treat them as humans? And I know that seems obvious, but a lot of people treat people as resources. They treat them as tools. And Jim has a very different perspective of this that goes around respect and appreciation. And we unpack all of that in today's episode on the podcast. My job is to help you find some places where you want to grow. We create content like this on a regular basis, but here's the real offer to you. If you are stuck in any way around where your business is going and what's next, you probably want to get a leadership performance evaluation. These leadership performance evaluations are standard practice for any client that comes on board. But if you're curious about this before you even become a client, and I'm making a special offer to you before we actually launch this out to everyone else, this leadership performance evaluation will go through 6 dimensions of leadership and your culture to assess where are you lagging, where do you need to prioritize, and even help you plan and maybe connect the dots across these things. I've been doing this for over a decade, and I know that I can, as a third party, give you value. You may not see that right away, but me actually not understanding your business and not understanding your industry will allow you to see things differently because of the questions and the prompting that we ask through this process. So this leadership performance evaluation will help you really guide your company with more clarity, more strength. And I'd love to offer that to you. Just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call today. And we're going to be putting out formal information around this soon. So if you're getting this, you're getting in at a special time. We've been doing this for years, with our paid clients, and we're going to offer it to you for absolutely no cost. So it has a full 100% money back guarantee. Little joke there. But if you want to go sign up for that, just go to genehammett.com and schedule your call today. So here's the interview with Jim. Jim, how are you?
Hi, Gene. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on the show. We're going to talk about how to treat your employees and why that's such an important thing inside of company growth, knowing to treat them well. Tell me about your company who recently made the Inc. list, LodeStar Software Solutions.
Yep. So thanks for having me again. I started LodeStar Software Solutions with my co-founder 10 years ago now. I was 26 at the time, didn't like the job I had and thought running a business would be easy, right? And then I proceeded to make every single small business mistake imaginable. And a big part of that was the people, right? Not having the right folks in the right seats, not having the right structure for people coming on. Even still, one thing that always baffles and surprises me is the difference between a really good employee, an okay employee, and then a destructive employee, which is literally addition by subtraction when you eventually go and remove them. So the time it takes in dealing with people and the lift that you get from really good employees is absolutely amazing.
I know that you talked about the company, but not real sure that you shared, what do you guys actually do at LodeStar?
Yeah. That's important. Well, I wanted to talk about the people, right? So yeah. We're a provider of data. So we provide data about how much it costs when you buy a home or refinance on a mortgage. We sell that data to mortgage originators, banks, mortgage companies, credit unions, all throughout the country.
Perfect. When you made the Inc. list, I make assumptions. in the early days of this, you and your co-founder were probably carrying a lot on your back, but you decided we needed more people, we needed help.
Yeah.
And when you were going through those phases of the business to get to 14 employees now, because we made sure that was clear in what you said to me earlier. What do you think got you to the point where you realized that how you treat your employees would give you the kind of output and performance that you wanted across the organization?
I think we were fortunate that it was just a natural extension of who we are with me and my co-founder, Dave, we're just treating people the way we want to be treated. And then we're just seeing the help that we get from employees and how much our clients like them, and like dealing with us and seeing people happy about not just working with myself and Dave, but working with other people at the company. So I think it was just a pretty natural progression at the end of the day.
So it comes from you naturally. Did you ever, I know you guys had jobs before this, being 26 that you mentioned.
Yeah, not a whole lot. I've worked, it was about 2.5 years not running a business.
Okay.
With all my outside working experience to go with what we talked about before. So the need for coaching or CEO groups or mentoring is something I'm constantly looking at.
Well, that's good to know, because that's part of what we believe in as well. And I think a lot of people that are listening to the show also agree that getting outside perspective is a faster way to grow and proceed. But treating employees, I don't want to throw anyone in the bus, but did you experience any kind of bad bosses, bad managers that told you that you needed to treat people differently?
A little bit. I think a part of any entrepreneur or person who starts their own business is just a bullheadedness, for lack of a better word, about not really liking being managed in many ways. And I think I was in that category where I was admittedly not the easiest person to manage all the time, because I think at the company I was at before I started mine, I looked at their leadership and I thought, hey, if they can do this, I can go run a company. This isn't that hard, and they're not that smart or good at what they do, right? And some of that was right and a lot of that was wrong, and I learned a lot of hard things along the way over the last 10 years. But I've definitely dealt with managers that were more difficult, and I think there's a lot of truth to the saying, people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And the managers that I liked, I had a really good relationship with. They were on the same wavelength, and that they, knew I would come to them with questions. They let me be independent, and that was a style that worked for me. But that doesn't work for everyone. So I think that's also really important about managing people, is knowing what you're dealing with and knowing kind of, what they need.
There's a term that you had shared with our team when we're doing research about your company and what you're doing, treat your people right.
Yep.
How do you describe what's right? Because that can be misinterpreted by people, and it's a very big term, but what's right to you?
I think part of it is the way that you want to be treated. Right? Part of it is just the way that is human in many ways. And I think some of this may sound a little bit cynical, but for me, I think there's absolutely an intersection of doing the right thing is what's also right for business. So it's keeping people happy. It's being accommodating, something like, hey, you don't need to be here at 9 o'clock every day. If you can't get until 9:15 because you have to drop your kid off, sure, no problem. Right. And there are people who are more sticklers about that, that sort of thing. So it's just, I think just figuring out where you push, what your non-negotiables are, and where you can give that type of leverage or flexibility, I should say.
You mentioned being human, and I have to smile when I say that, because what else are we getting? Choice do we have?
Yeah.
But I've also experienced this in my life. We run into people. We run into people who they're on ego trips. They want to control things, whatever it may be, and they're not quite being human.
Yeah.
How would you assess others across the organization? Because you've got, people that are leading teams across in your company, to being human.
I think it's just giving people the benefit of a doubt, right? There's just understanding. There's a quote I really like by George Carlin, is most people work just hard enough to not get fired, and they make just enough money to not quit. And a lot of people fit that category, right? And understanding, you have one of the questions here about how do you have other people be owners in the company, or how do you inspire that? And the short answer is I don't, because I do not expect that. Not everyone has the same upside as a business owner or a founder or an executive in the company. So you should not have the exact same expectation of what they should be doing, right? You should be very defined on what their job is, how they help people, the way they should respond to clients. But I think all too often people, especially in startups, expect other people in their company to grind as hard as they are, and it's just not realistic.
A lot of this comes from research I've done over the years and having these conversations with you. And I'll share one of the key questions.
Mm-hmm.
I asked a lot of people that were the founders, made this Inc. list. I think the year was 2018. So that's how far back this goes. And I was asking them, how do you get employees to take responsibility for your growth goals as the company's growing? And these founders would correct me and say, well, I don't really want them to be responsible. I want them to take a sense of ownership. Do you see it differently?
A little bit. There's a phrase that our sales and marketing director uses a lot. She used to work at Ritz-Carlton, and one of their tenets, they have 10, 20, whatever they are, tenets, is I want to be involved in the planning of the work that affects me. Right. That's a like Ritz-Carlton on the wall tenet. And I think that's really important because that's where I see, whether it be ownership or involved in growth goals they don't need to know necessarily the same things that you do as a CEO or owner of the business, but there are ways that their job affects the whole. So them understanding of that, being involved in that planning and having those clear pictures of what to do are super duper important. A book that I read recently, which you probably know, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, or 4DX, is something I'm trying to slowly but surely implement. And the basic premise is every person in the company should have only one goal. That's it. One wildly important goal. That's something that they focus 15 to 20% of their time on. The rest is everything else. And achieving that one goal should be enough to continue to drive your business forward. So I would say that they don't need to be focused on overall ownership, on overall company growth, but they should be focused on what that one key goal is for them. And admittedly, I could be a lot better about communicating that to everyone. It's always a work in progress.
Now, Jim and I were just discussing ownership, and don't get it twisted and anything like that. I really do believe that we all have different perspectives, and maybe we even speak the same language without using the same word. Because some of the things that we talked about inside this interview, because I actually record these little moments after the interview, are very much in alignment with people feeling like owners. If you include them in the process that which they're ultimately involved, they feel a sense of ownership. If there's a sense of transparency around, they feel a sense of ownership. If they feel like they're growing, there's a sense of ownership. And you don't need to have a financial stake to create this. If they feel empowered, there's a sense of ownership. If they feel like the mission is aligned with their own personal mission, they feel like owners in a way. And if you can create those things, you get that sense of ownership. They may not work as hard as you, but they will work harder than those that have no reason or no connection to what the company's doing. They're just doing this for a paycheck. And that's the point. So back to Jim. Really appreciate you allowing me to share my thoughts on that and really connect with you here in these podcasts. Well, I can appreciate that. I think what you were talking about was the service standards. I think there's 24 at Ritz-Carlton.
That was it. Yeah.
I had Horst Schultze, one of my favorite interviews. I just got actually asked what was one of my favorite interviews, and he's one of them. He was one of the co-founders at Ritz-Carlton, and they do it every day. These tenants, they select one across the world.
Yep.
Every shift change, they actually remind each other of these, and they share little stories, and it's really an incredible way. It's interesting that you have an employee who came from that structure, and they brought this idea and concept. The question I have that goes with this, like if those are the tenets of Ritz-Carlton's, do you guys have tenets or values that you run by and live by to get to where you are?
Yeah, we have 3 key values: connectivity, clarity, and community. And those were something that we tried to be pretty conscientious about putting together, both in the way that we act towards each other, the way that our product helps people literally be more clear about what the cost of buying a home is, connecting, disparate systems. We're helping connect our clients to the 3,600 or quarter of deeds offices in the country that they shouldn't have to maintain themselves or contact themselves. So there's part of that fits our product. And also for me, it's just clarity of the way we deal with each other. And I don't know if it's the New Englander, Northeasterner in me, where we're, I think, a little shorter, a little more abrupt, but it's our way of being respectful of, I'm going to be very clear because it's going to save you time. And quite frankly, it's going to save me time.
I am curious. A lot of people have values, but having them is only, the table stakes. You have to actually live the values, and they're expressed in different rituals or different things that we do from week to week or day to day. Do you have a favorite way to live your values?
I think clarity is the one that's big enough for me. The biggest for me is just being really abundantly clear about how the company's doing, what our goals are, what we're working on, what's going well, what's not going well. That's a big one. The idea of connectivity, of connecting people together is always something I'm really passionate about. So I feel like some of those were things that I definitely do personally. And the idea of community, I kind of bristle at the fact when a company refers to themselves as a family. I do think they're two different things, but it's a community, the company of people that you work with, and quite frankly, we spend a lot of time with the people we work with, in some cases more so than our family. So I think it's really important that there is that community there and you build that. But it is different than a family.
I asked Jim about living the values, and I want to make sure when I talk about this that it's really clear with you. When you have values, we talked about what Jim's were. He's able to list them very clearly. But when we get to the ritual side, you want to be able to describe how we're living them on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. Now, my next book will have a chapter devoted specifically to this about living your values. That I'll give you one example of that. You want to make sure that you are recognizing people for being in alignment with the values. So if you have a value of clarity, then you can look for the places where someone has took a very complex process or complex data and made clarity out of it. And you can actually recognize them in your next meeting. And I call this a shout out. It's not that I named it. It's just when a lot of people name it different things, but it's just recognizing the individuals across your team in a moment publicly. And it will give them a little bit of recognition with their peers, but it also tells a story that others are expected to live this value as well. And it will play in their mind. If you do this consistently, you make it a ritual, it really does help you. And there's many, many rituals you can do to live the values. You just got to pick the right ones for you and your organization and really understand the power of them as you move forward. Back to Jim. I agree with that 100%. The typical thing that comes up in my coaching quite often is it's more like a professional sports team.
Yeah.
We're looking for the best player at each role. And yes, we do have some connection with certain people. We do let them hang around, but we also don't want to sacrifice, the end goal, which is to win championships. In sports, it's different in business, but it's not necessarily a family. You don't fire your family that often. If you want to keep it and be family, I guess you don't do it at all.
Right.
Jim, I want to switch gears here just a little bit because I want to get a sense for your leadership style. We've been talking about how you treat employees and how you treat your people, but how would you describe your leadership style?
Good question. I think I try to lead by example. I try to be approachable with questions. I try to be communicative. I feel like there's a difference between a boss and a leader, and I want to be a leader. I don't want to be a boss, right? I don't want to tell people. There's a diagram I saw as a boss is someone was pulling like a carriage or something like that, right? And the boss is on the top, getting pulled, saying go, 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 and the leader is next to them, helping them pull it, right? And I think that's something that really stands out to me is I want to feel like we're in this together. These are the challenges we're dealing with, and this is how we're going to work through it together. And one thing that took a while for me, and I'm sure a lot of folks that you talk with, is I was very reluctant to share a lot of company information with other employees about whether it be revenue numbers, how we're doing, problems we're having. It was very insular, and I feel like you're taking information away from the people who are best able to help you solve problems. So that's going back to the clarity piece where the more open you are with things, people for the most part aren't stupid, right? They're able to see problems, they're able to see issues, and the more you let them in, they're not going to judge you for it. They're going to be able to help you. I think if you have the right people in the right seats.
Now, you said you were reluctant to share the information. Does that mean now that you open up financials and to select people or to everyone across the organization?
Not to everyone fully, but we do. For the last 2 years, we have a executive leadership team. So my co-founder and then our 3 directors, and they see pretty much all of that information on a monthly basis. Their compensation, they have a profit. There's some profit sharing. So they kind of have similar goals, which are basically grow revenue and reduce costs. And beyond that, I do share our kind of month-over-month growth numbers and new client numbers with all employees on our company meeting. And honestly, Gene, this past year, because the mortgage industry, the real estate industry has not gone well, right? So those growth numbers over the last year shrank. And then even the first quarter of this year, we're below our last year growth number. We're below our revenue from last year because our volume is just shrank. Like there's a lot less people buying houses. And I was the first month in January, I knew it was going to be negative, and I was asked myself a question: should I still share it? Should I stop doing this number? And I didn't. I kept sharing the information because it was just in line with our values. And I feel like it's more important to share it and give context around it than not. And for us, that context was, yeah, we're a few percentage points down from last January. Honestly, we thought it was going to be much worse. So like, this is why things are going well. We're profitable at that number. This is why we're not concerned.
I found that when people actually do share key numbers around things, even if it's bad, you get a rally effect. Have you seen that with your employees, that they're taking care of the things that they can within their control to turn the numbers around?
I think so. And I think there's definitely, we're in an industry that was rampant with layoffs over the last year. And we have not laid anyone off. And that's probably one of the things I'm most proud about, that we were able to still grow a bit in an industry that was down 50% year over year. So I think that's important. But then people are also just worried about their jobs, as they should be. So being understanding of that, and then putting your priorities out there, I think is really important. And then, I think people will rally to the extent that they can, and they know that, you're trying to do right by them.
I love the fact that you have included at least two of the core principles or tenets of what gives people ownership. I know that you had a different viewpoint than what I have, but after hundreds of interviews, including people into the plans that they're making, right? The example you gave me, and then this aspect of transparency, it makes them feel included, makes them feel like, okay, those that are included and those that know what's going on, they have a higher sense of ownership of this, your executive leadership team. And it makes sense. They're closer to you. They're closer to these numbers. They're going to have a higher sense of ownership, and it connects to actual profit sharing. Those are two of the 6 core pieces that get people to feel like owners, even if they don't have a financial stake. Is that interesting to you?
Yeah. Now I'm curious about what the other 4 are.
Mission being one of them is the company on a mission that's aligned with me. Am I growing? Right. So am I here to, am I more valuable than I was last year because I've learned something?
Right.
There's a mindset component to it. And where's the other one? I'm drawing a blank on my own stuff. Give me just 1 second, and then we're recording. It is empowerment. Do they feel empowered? And you probably do quite a few of those things across your organization, and maybe didn't have, not aware of my research and my data.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I put your book on my wish list already on Audible. So,
well, I haven't named it yet. The book that we're writing now, that the old one is a good book, but the one we're writing now is the one you need, because it really is about how do you create more leaders across your organization.
Yeah.
Jim, we've had a great conversation talking about, how do you treat people and why that's important for growing a business. I really appreciate your wisdom and insight here.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Wow, what a great interview. He's got a lot of insight around treating employees and why treating them as humans is really important in this day and age. They have an incredible, group of people that are rallying through a tough time in the mortgage industry. I'm sure you can imagine, with the interest rates rising, the transactions have fallen. And if his industry is really focused on that, the software solutions they provide, there's some challenges there, and people are rallying because of it, because they treat them well. And imagine if you had that within your organization in the good times, having people rally together. It really is an important aspect of how you treat your people. It matters. If there's anything my company can do for you, whether it be executive coaching or leadership development, developing your managers into leaders, make sure you check out some of the other free content we have. You can go to coreelevation.com. That's our company, and you can check us out on LinkedIn as well. If there's anything I can do for you, make sure you reach out and let me know. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, the courage. We'll see you next time.